According to you and my brother, it's called borrowing. The book seems to be locked, but I have the key and I just... There we go. I opened it. It is supposed to be gold. This isn't the book of the life. This is the book of the dead. No, it's perfectly alright to be reading this. I mean, what harm ever came from reading a book? Oh, stop your worrying. It's just a book. I just want to look at the history it contains. I mean, imagine it's been buried underneath that sand for thousands and thousands of years, only to be discovered now by us. I mean, who else can have the privilege of saying that we've discovered something so ancient? I mean, the people who buried it there, they're dead now, obviously, but they've been dead for thousands of years. It's as if we're part of history now. Don't you understand? I just want to try out my ancient Egyptian. There's nothing wrong with practicing ancient Egyptian now, is there? Cool. If you don't mind, I have to recall my education in order to make out the edgings. Omun Ra, Omun Day. It talks of the night and the day. Sueya haram utup sanamepeti tuye imatin supin ita sui yatoe 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 yatoe. Did you hear that? Here, I'll read it again. Maybe your ancient Egyptian will be better if I read it closer. Okay, so first it starts off with Amun Ra and Amun Day. And then it goes on to say Sueya Haram Utups Anambeti Betuye Imatin Sup Ita Sui I don't know what that sound was. It couldn't have been all that bad though. Probably just the wind. Look at these ancient Egyptian scrawlings though. Here, I'll show you some of my scrawlings. I've been practicing my penmanship in Egyptian because frankly it's been suffering and actually it's always been quite a weak subject with me. I can read it and I can write it, but my writing of it is quite subpar, to say the least. But here, I'll show you it. Let me take out my journal. Ancient Egyptians wrote their letters and words based on the natural world that they could see. So for instance, instead of having Roman letterings like we have them, where they're all in shapes rather than, you know, anything else, they based theirs off of animals and sunsets and whatnot. So that's the interesting part about it. But here, I'm gonna show it. A is a bird. B is I believe it was a rod or a staff. C is a bowl, and frankly this marking is quite frequent throughout the lettering, so it's quite easy to memorize these etchings. D, I can't even tell what D is considering my penmanship, but I do believe it's just another bowl. E is two feathers. which is also very common as well. F is a worm, which is, I believe, also V. G is, I believe it's also a bulb or a lamp holder. I was gonna say a lampshade, but I think it's a lamp holder or a palace, in my opinion. H is, like an intertwined pretzel, even though my handwriting makes it look more like a man running away, or a woman running away, rather. I is just one feather. F or J is a snake. K is the bowl. Again, this one's going to be repetitious, as I did say. L is a lion, which was quite curious to me. M is an owl. N is simply a zigzag. O, I'm actually not quite sure. I do believe it's a flower that's hanging like a water lily. Or not a water lily, another type of flower near the riverbanks, considering how the Nile was so important to them. They based all their gods and rituals around the Nile, considering how the Nile was what provided them with nutrients and whatnot. So it's quite fascinating to see how well they've done. And considering how, even though the methods of hygiene were highly questionable with their using feces in a majority of their herbal recipes to cure people, which is obviously highly frowned upon. The fact that they could make such durable paper, such as papyrus, and make inks and whatnot, and create such large pyramids, which, in all honesty, if it were to be, it can't be duplicated in today's time with the tools that they had at the time, because in our minds it's just impossible. I mean, the way their minds worked, and considering how they didn't even have the brilliance of Isaac Newton or anyone who developed, or I believe it's also Aristotle who developed, arithmetic and the mathematics that are equipped to architects nowadays to develop buildings. The fact that they could actually build those pyramids with little to nothing else except for barbaric and prehistoric tools is quite a show of their intelligence and our own ignorance. But anyways, P, I believe, is simply another cup. I'm gonna simply assume what they are. Q, my education as an Egyptologist is failing me at the moment. I do not know why, but Q is a shoe. R is a frisbee. S is a sickle. T is a cartoon character's nose. U is another bird. V is another worm. W is another bird, which is ironic considering how it should be worm, but I'm translating it into English rather than what their perceptions of what words should, or what animals and what sounds should be making, animals' names and whatnot. Anyways, I'm digressing. X is another bowl. Y is two feathers again. Z, I believe, was a sunset, and Sh is just a little, or rather a long rectangle. So that's my rough explanation in layman's terms of what the letterings in ancient Egypt is. And so I myself find it quite fascinating. I've always have, and frankly I'm going to continue reading about ancient Egypt probably for the rest of my life, simply because why not. But yeah, anyways, I don't think there's anything to worry about with that sound. I mean, it's still bothering me a little bit, but I think it's simply because you made me paranoid with your concern of me reading from the Book of the Dead rather than the Book of the Living, which is what it's really called. But yes, anyways, hello, may I help you? I borrowed it. Yes, I did read from it. There's no need to shout. Oh, come off it now. You can't believe something like that could possibly happen. If there was a mummy that is come back to life, you really think that us, human beings, mortals, could possibly outrun its wrath? Well, if you insist that we leave, then we'll leave. Here, you can take the Book of the Dead if you want. I'm done with it. I've already read all that I wanted to read. There you go. Okay, fine. We'll leave if you insist.